Oh, watch me tea. We have dealt with some pretty big batteries on this channel with our Tesla Model 3 batteries, 60 kilowatt hours, and 2 of them. Anyway, the time of year is coming when we start to think about outdoor living. So with that in mind, I've got my hands on a LiTime 200 amp hour 12 volt battery, and this is going to live in a van. I'm pretty sure I've removed all my personal data off this box. Now, I have had a little look and opened the cover up, but I've not taken the battery out here and I haven't done any tests. So in this video, I want to find out if I've actually got a half decent battery. Now, LiTime are pretty well known and they tend to be on the more budget friendly end, but that has loads of applications. Only a few years ago, buying a battery of this size cost you a lot of money, over £1,000. I remember thinking, should I get one or build one myself? And sometimes just building batteries isn't really an option just due to time. And these things have progressed so that they are just sometimes a bit of a better option than building up battery packs yourself. Maybe not as fun, but around £450, something like that, maybe a little bit less with discounts. You get quite a lot for your money now. So let's open it up and find out what we've got. There we go. It's amazing how much lighter these are. They've still got obviously some density to them, but how much lighter they are than the old lead acid battery. Let me have a tidy up and we'll move on. Okay, so here it is. Suitable for RVs, campers, outdoor activities. Solar, wind, backup power. Now, this is a fairly dumb battery, as it were, and you can pay more for a battery that has some sort of CAN bus or RS485 input so it can connect to an inverter. But for me, this isn't going to be put to that use. Having it dumb is perfect for me, and I will have a shunt on it so I know what power is going in and out of it. It does sound quite hollow on the top, not so much on the side, and it is fairly heavy. I hope it hasn't been shipped with just a box of sand in there. I have opened up laptop batteries before that have dummy cells in them, which obviously aren't producing any power. But I don't think that that's the case for LiTime. They have a good reputation, as I say, despite being on the lower budget end. Let's check the voltage. .17. Divide that by 4. 3.29 volts shipped, so that's pretty good. Now I want to check out some of this battery's parameters with this inverter, but before we get installing the inverter and running some devices off this, we do need to charge this up and find out how much charge it took from storage and then do a discharge test. I want to know that this definitely has 200 amp hours, not just for myself. I do this with every single battery that I get just to prove that we haven't got anything dodgy or that there's just something wrong with the battery, but also to prove to you that the battery is what it says it is. Okay, so let's put that away for now. Instructions seem to come in a nice pouch. Now, I did have a flick through the instructions before I got it. I know not very manly to flick through instructions, but I just thought that, where is it? They basically say that this can go up to 48 volts and you can connect 4 in parallel. So yeah, that picture there, that demonstration was my favorite. Looks like some of the projects I've worked on in the past. Okay, well, we're not using it in any of those orientations. What I did like though, after it explains all of the different ways that you can connect it up, how much power, how much current you would get out of it, what voltage, it gives you a page for writing your wiring diagram. Now, I'm obviously not going to need a wiring diagram for this, but there are projects that I've been on where just putting it down on paper really helps. So, nice addition to have that on the page. Anyway, that's enough with instructions. Let's throw these away. Get ourselves this on charge with a time lapse to see how much charge it takes. Now, this charging is going to take a little while. I've got a server power supply that's 12 volts and I haven't quite worked out how to up the voltage on this one yet. You can up it to 14 volts, which give me a bit more power, but I'm limited. That's capable of over 60 amps, but the charger I've got is only able to handle, I think it's 30 amps, 35 amps. So if this is pretty much flat, yeah, we're talking like 8 hours of charging. So I guess we better get started, eh? And this thing's scratched up. I need to make myself up some leads to charge this. So we've got an XT60 connector up to the 8mm lug. So I'll be back in a minute with that. Now, I just want to dwell for a second on the fact that we know lithium iron phosphate can handle a lot. 4,000 cycles from a 450 pound battery. Absolutely crazy to me. Right, let's get on with making some cable lugs. One sound connection. Well, couple of spare washers by the looks of things. A couple of caps, which will be nice. Recognising 13.1, which is what we said before, wasn't it? 13.17. Let's take it all the way to 3.65. 4S, 30 amps is the max current, and no balancer. So it looks like this battery's come to me with about half capacity, with about 100-ish amp hours being taken into the battery. And it's discharging nicely, already over 200 amp hours, and we finally reach 207 amp hours, so slightly more than it's rated. Yes. Now I set this to discharge slightly lower than its discharge voltage, and then from that point we can give it a charge back up. But you'll notice the charger doesn't want to charge because the low voltage cutoff has kicked in. We have to put it in lead acid mode, which just forces charge into a battery even though it doesn't receive a voltage back. A short burst on that and the battery's happily taking a charge now. So we've tested both low voltage cutoff and high voltage cutoff, and they are both working nicely. That will protect the cells inside. Just monitor and add up the total milliamps it took to charge this thing up. Okay, so with overcharge and over discharge tested, it's time to move on with this inverter. We're not going to need this cable, and then I can get cooking some food with this thing. Now, I can't remember if this is a 100 amp or 200 amp BMS. I actually only need 100 amp. I'm not generally going to be running it off one of these inverters, but it will test out an overcurrent function if we stick it on an air fryer. And then of course if it does work, I'll end up with some sausage sandwiches. Okay, so with those off, let's put our cables on. I'm gonna put this onto here. .9 volts in, and I will bring in the Ninja. Okay, so some sausages here. Stick those on. $1,700 watts, over 100 amps. As I said, I cannot remember if this is a 200 or a 100 amp BMS, but we'll soon find out. So far so good, but this could of course shut off. So we're pulling 135 amps, which of course would mean, I would suspect this is a 200 amp BMS. I could look in the instructions to confirm this, but yeah. Okay, so this BMS is confusing me. The instructions say 100 amps, the website says 200 amps. I later had a go at putting as much load as I could on it, which is what I'm trying to do, but I'm maxing out the inverter by adding the hairdryer. But I was later able, for about 10 minutes, to pull 210 amps. So, who knows? Now, I did reach out to LiTime and they said that their BMS is able to handle 3 times the rated amount for certain amounts of time. My question is the cable rated for these long periods? It must be if they've got that BMS inside, and I'm not going to find out without opening it. Well, there we go. So it can cook sausages. That is a good thing. I think I'm just overloading this inverter. We're working out about 130 amps. If it had 100 amp hour BMS, I would find it highly unlikely that it would be able to output that much current. And then both of the hair dryers I've tried are about 500 watts, so that puts it over 2000 on this. But that runs at 1,667 watts, and it's handled that just fine. So the sort of reason you'd be using this battery, that's more than enough power, and you just manage. Ultimately, I would always encourage, depending on your use case, to go up to a higher voltage, so connecting multiple batteries together, choosing at least 24, if not 48 volts, if you're going to be using it in a constant off-grid setting. But this is actually to power 12 volt things, so absolutely fine for what I need. Now I'm going to go and eat some sausages, and the next and final test for this, now I've taken a bit of power out of it, is to stick it in the freezer, or at least leave it out in the cold. I think we got a cold couple of nights, and see if this thing will charge below 0 degrees. And that's our final test, really. See if it will take a charge at below that. It should have protection. Now, it doesn't have heating, self-heating. Kind of got mixed feelings about it, because ultimately if you keep this in an environment that's not going to be that cold or insulate it, you shouldn't need it. It really does depend on your use case, but for me it will be absolutely fine to not have self-heating. I've managed this long without it. Okay, let's go eat some sausages. You don't need to come in here again today, do you? Right, that's one more shelf out. I physically do not feel that I can take another one out. Oh yes. I haven't pushed it all the way in, but And there we go. The battery is in the freezer. The things that I do for YouTube, eh? This has been in the freezer for a number of hours. You can possibly see the condensation forming on it, and there's ice forming on the terminals there, so it's most definitely cold. It's got a smell in here, the smell of cooked sausages. Never had that smell in here before. Okay, first off, the reason it's gone in the freezer is because I wonder if there's a low temperature cutoff. 13.31. So there's no low temperature cutoff for discharge, but let's see if there's a low temperature cutoff for charging. Now, if it doesn't have this feature, then you definitely shouldn't be doing this with a battery. But we've got to find out, haven't we? Now, I really want to know what's inside this battery. And I could find out by taking it apart, or the seal here. But because I plan on using this battery in the future, I don't really want to be doing that. If only there was another way.
LiTime in welded terminals, and here's the temperature sensor. Let's test this thing out. And the glue they have on these pieces of foam is hard to take off. I don't think we've ever seen a battery at this price point that has low temp charging protection and this massive surge capacity. This is like an AO lithium battery, but for cheaper, which is amazing. And everything else that they have made has been really good. I do not like the cheesy marketing. I don't like their website, but they make good batteries. No one's been able to complain about these at all.
Well, there you have it. Will likes their batteries. That might not be the exact battery, but Will's happy with it, so that's good enough for me. Anyway. So here we go. Don't do this with your battery if it's not got that built in. Okay, so that is taking a charge. By the looks of it, this particular battery doesn't have low temperature cutoff. Again, if you're going to use a product like an inverter or some sort of DC to DC charger, you can have temperature sensors in that, which means you'll avoid that issue. But yeah, by the looks of things, it's not got a temperature sensor for charging at low temperature. Okay, well, I'm going to stop this because there's no point in damaging it. Now, earlier in the video, when I talked about the low temperature charging and I couldn't get it to react, it might just be that I was too impatient with the freezer and I should have let it freeze for longer. It was in there for about 5 hours and ChatGPT tells me that that's enough. It takes more energy to freeze water than it does one of these batteries. So I might do another test and then pin it as a comment. Anyway, back to the rest of the video. Okay, so what do I think of the LiTime, the 12 volt, 200 amp hour battery? It does exactly what it says. We had slightly more capacity than they stated. I've got a feeling that this is their 100 amp hour cells, but there's just 2 of them. So we've got 8 cells in here. That is my guess. I do feel the casing could potentially be a little bit smaller for the size of the battery. I think they do a newer version in America where the casing is slightly smaller. Possibly, I could be wrong there. As I say, there's a tiny bit of space, but it does what it says on the tin. It's rated for the capacity. It has over temperature, which I'm just not going to run it to 75 degrees for it to test that. And the low charge and high charge both work. So overall, it's a more basic battery, but the price is reflected in that. Lots of people are quite happy with these batteries, and I'm sure I will be too. I will report back in the future if I do have any issues, but we should expect our 4,000 cycles, at least 100% depth of discharge out of this, and they're warranted for 5 years. So there we are. Because I am quite happy with this, I've left an affiliate link in the description below where you can get 5% off if you're interested. Every little helps, hey? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Battery Man out. Aw man, do not throw into fire. Ugh, that's ruined my evening. Do not disassemble. Disassemble.